Hi, yogis and friends. Jennie Weiss here from WiseMind Yoga Psychology. So I am so honored and so grateful to have Kim. And Kim, you go by Kim Johnson, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so Kim Johnson, because I like on your Facebook, it has your maiden name too. So I just
𝗏𝗏 Johnson. Yeah.
Okay. And remind us too your practice name. What is your practice that you have up there in Massachusetts?
Actually, we're in upstate New York, in Lake George, New York, is where I'm located. Yep, which is a couple hours from Massachusetts. But my practice name is Creative Balance Counseling.
Creative Balance Counseling. Okay.
Yeah.
And I should have known that about New York. I'm so sorry. I got my the different states and the different people to talk to. I apologize because I know we've talked about Lake George.
Yeah,
and we've talked about your streets there on Lake George because it's, what is it, about, is it 2 or 3? How far is it from New York City?
We're about 4 hours, 4.5 hours from New York City. So we're in the Adirondacks. Beautiful.
Oh my gosh, girl. You must be like, it's like living in a retreat, like vacation all the time, right?
Yes.
I'm definitely going to have to come up and visit you. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's take a minute to talk a little bit about what brought you to the WiseMind Yoga Psychology training. And let's start, you can talk a little bit about professionally and how you want to integrate that into your practice, but also for your own personal healing and transformation. What kind of brought you, what was going on in your life at the time where you were kind of feeling drawn and ready is a good word to step into the program?
Yeah, you got me thinking about like really what was the reason why I was, jumping on board to do the training. And, there was no big event that was happening in my life at the time. I was just, at a point where my youngest was moving off to college. So the house was going to be different. I have 3 boys and 2 of them are in college. One is, in his profession. And so I was like, kind of, ready for something new, not only for my practice, but personally. But I wasn't seeking anything out. What really happened was, during COVID, in my profession, there was, I was doing so much work, telehealth, seeing more and more people. There was a lot of anxiety, depression, fear, and, everybody was, as a, collective needing to heal. And I realized that, my traditional way of practicing talk therapy was just not enough. For a couple of reasons. I mean, I myself had, started my own personal journey with yoga, maybe just 10 years prior. And then also doing some meditation and mindfulness. And I recognized how it helped me regulate and, get rid of some things. And so just seeing my clients and going through this, I was like, I really knew I needed to offer more than just cognitive behavioral therapy. I needed to offer some more tools. And I personally knew it worked, but I didn't know how. So in my practice, I would always say, hey, you really should do mindfulness, or really you should go to yoga. And so then I got to thinking, I always somehow wanted to integrate it into my practice. So I was just, on Facebook, and this came through my feed. And it said WiseMind Yoga Psychology School Training. And I thought, man, I have not seen that before. I had never. And I was like, really cool. I thought I'd never seen that before. And I've always wanted to look at it in that perspective, have the yoga psychology. So I jumped on your website. I read through everything, and it all checked off the boxes that I was interested in, because I'm very into health and wellness. But I read through all of, what you've done. And I like the science, research, backing with all of, that you provide. So it really, to me, was like, I need to look into this a little bit more.
Right.
So that's really what, brought me to it, I would say.
Well, it's really interesting. A couple things. One, I'm a big believer in the science and the soul, right? That there's the science part of it that is the neuroscience of yoga and the neuroscience of yoga psychology, and that we're actually rewiring the mind and the body. And then there's the soul work that we call it, or the shadow work, where you're actually healing the heart space. And it's that combination of the science and the soul that creates the true somatic healing, right? Which is I'm getting goosebumps talking about this, by the way.
Yeah.
That is the deeper level of healing that has to happen, as you mentioned, beyond talk therapy, right? So talk therapy is a great augment to the work that we do, and it's important in the steps to healing. So I'm not here to say talk therapy obviously has its place in the healing journey, and it is part of the journey. But to your point, it can only get you so far, because talk therapy does not heal the somatic trauma that is residing in our body, is residing, in our whole body, in our heart, in the wiring of our mind, in the patterns that we tell ourselves. Like, those things have to be released and shifted. And even once we've rewired the mind, which is extremely important, and cognitive behavioral therapy can help us do that.
Right.
There's still the part of our heart and the other parts of our body where the trauma and the emotion is lodged in our body somewhere. And until that is released, we are going to manifest it in some kind of physical or mental health condition, period. And that's all scientifically proven, right? So this is not woo-woo stuff. This is not like, generational trauma, it is generational trauma, but it is science-based, that it will manifest in the body in some way if it's not healed. And transmuted. And transmuted is another yoga term we use. Alchemized. Yeah. So that's why we teach things like emotional rinsing in the training, right? Beyond just yoga, breath work, and meditation, we teach you how to do an emotional rinse. And so whether that you are doing it as a therapist and you're doing it with your clients, or whether you're using that as a tool for yourself so that you have a healthy way that you're releasing emotions, and difficult emotions like anger and sadness and grief and frustration and resentment, and all the heavy, deep emotions that we carry on a daily basis, or that, over years have a tendency to build up, especially resentment. When you've not let something go, you've not forgiven somebody for something, or maybe resentment builds up in your marriage, for example, and it turns into anger. You've got to have somewhere for those emotions to go, or you're going to project that onto everybody else. And you know that because you're a therapist, but I'm sharing that, I'm putting that out into the world, that is a big, proponent of what we teach in the training, and it's important. And that work is important no matter if you decide to be a traditional yoga teacher, you go through the training or the program yourself for your own healing, or whether you decide, you're going to do the healing for yourself and you're going to do healing for your whole family, in generational trauma and future generations, and for your kids and all of that. So you and I have talked about that too, that's been an underlying motivation and inspiration for the healing that I've done, that many of the women that have joined the program, because many of them are moms, and it's not just healing for us or the healing for our clients, like we're healing for our whole families.
Correct. Totally.
Yeah. So tell me, as far as doing a consultation with me, okay, I want to get into this for a second, because somebody out here, right, that's watching on Instagram, or somebody watches the replay of this on Facebook, and they're like, who's Jennie Wise? What is WiseMind Yoga? She's asking me to go on a call with me. Like, who is this person? But people just understanding that this is part of our application process. And it's really for me to understand where you are on your healing journey. And nobody's ever 100% ready to do this work, but there is a scale of where somebody's ready, right? If somebody's on a 1 or a 2 on a scale of a 10, you're probably not ready for this work.
Right.
That's why we get you on a call, is also because I want to gauge, like, what are you struggling with right now? Just share with me what you're struggling with. Where do you want to go? What's the gap? And could the program potentially support you? So tell me, with your experience with me, what was it like getting on a call? Because you and I didn't know each other when we got on.
No.
We didn't know each other.
It was really, no, it was, as I was going through the, the feed and the website and the information about the program, there was the opportunity to meet with you through a consultation. And I was like, oh, why not? And then I hadn't really done any online work, some professional things, but nothing really. So it was a little new to me, but I just also thought, okay, what do I got to lose? It's just like I can certainly just have the conversation and see what it's about. And also, I think it was like a time frame. I jumped on and there was just like a couple of days left before that session was going to close. So I felt a little urgency there too, which I was like, ooh, okay, if I do want to do this, I'm going to have to start thinking about it now. Because it wasn't something, like I said, I hadn't been thinking about doing this at all. Like, sometime down the road, I didn't even know what it would look like.
Right.
So I said, all right, so just did a couple of clicks, and picked the time that I wanted. It said, I'm like, okay, that day I can do Tuesday at 9:30. Okay. And then a click, and then I think I got a response back. Okay. All set. And we were meeting just like we are right now. And before that though, again, I had a list of questions. I had thought about like what I wanted to know about the program. I thought about what I wanted to do with it. And, but then I needed to know what it was. So that's, you and I just kind of felt like we're talking right now, like to a friend, I didn't feel pressure or that, you had a hidden agenda. I feel like what your program is about and you've produced it time and time again, and you've seen the positive results in people. So it was just more so, wanting to share what you're doing with others, and hopefully they can find the same healing and transformation, like guiding people. So I just felt like you were guiding me towards that.
Well, I love that. That makes me like, every time I do these interviews, literally it's me trying not to get emotional, because when you hear the feedback later on, whether it's somebody's that's gone through the program or just hearing people's experience of what it was like us getting on a call together, almost every single person says it felt like getting on a call with a friend.
Yeah.
And I was talking to 𝗬𝗃𝗍 about a week ago, and she said the same thing. And she goes, Jennie, I can't give you any more of a higher compliment than that. The first time I got on a call with you, you put me at such ease and such, compassion and love and non-judgment, that I was telling you about like everything, like my whole life. And I never even talked to you before, but I felt such a sense of ease and trust with you.
Right.
And I knew your intentions were pure and that you cared. And like you just said, like, I'm just wanting to share my healing and transformation and what's worked for me and what I've seen with students with other people. And it's like, here's what it is. And if this resonates with you, let's go, join us. And if it doesn't, it doesn't, So to your point, my intention is never to get on and pressure anyone. My intention is, here's what it is. Tell me what's going on with you. Like, help me understand, whether it's professionally, personally, or both. What are you wanting to do? Whether somebody's a wellness coach, or they could be a mom, they could be a yoga teacher, they could be a professional where they're just dealing with stress and anxiety, or they're struggling in their relationships and they're potentially looking at maybe having to go through a divorce. You know what I'm saying? Like, so everybody's in different stages and different transitions in life that brings them to this training, if that makes sense. It goes beyond.
Absolutely. And I think for me, a couple of things, there were a couple of different shifts. Like I said, my kids, as a mom, I wanted to, and what you talked about earlier is I wanted to change some patterns so I could help them lead, in the future. I wanted to take a look at anything that I was doing that I could be doing better, not only for myself, but for for them, and my communication, my style. So it had to do with more than just, professionally, but I wasn't, I'm not getting any younger. So I'm thinking, we all know you think you got it all figured out, but you're like, I don't want to be doing this stuff anymore, but I don't know what else to do. I thought, I'm healthy. I run, I had done all like the inner, stuff like self-help, but I kept falling into traps of, behaviors that, with my family or friends, and it just didn't feel right. So I was like, what are these patterns? And honestly, when I started the program, I thought I was just going to be learning some things that I would help with my clients. And then when I knew I had to look at myself, I was like, really? I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't. And I had a little resistance, but yeah, I did. And I was like, of course you have to. How else can you get to the other side? So, and peel back the layers. And that's exactly, it was 6 months ago. And I would say I've uncovered a lot. And I feel like I'm not the same person I was when I started. However, I am just on a journey, and I have a ways to go to wherever I'm going to go. But like you said, with this, you're given, the tools through meditation, mindfulness, yoga, breath work, to help. And I'm quiet now, and I really like the restore yoga. So that's what I really could see. Never thought I would see myself as a yoga teacher, but I do want to now be a restorative yoga teacher. So that is my takeaway from this, and that's what I am gonna, not only bring into my practice, but bring into my, profession.
I love that. Well, I want to comment on what you just said.
Okay.
I'm going to share the WiseMind Soul Warrior page. So anybody who's watching this or watch the replay, you can go to �wisemindsoulwarrior.com, and that's where you can read about all the information that we just talked about, all the modules, very detailed page. But most importantly, there's a place up at the header, all over the page, where you can schedule a call. So there's literally probably 10 places on there. But you can go to �wisemindsoulwarrior.com. If you're on Instagram, you can also go to the bio link, and it's there as well. And you can schedule it through schedule a call or click on the WiseMind Soul Warrior page. So what you were saying about like the generational healing piece, we talked about that earlier, that was a huge component for me as well. When my daughter was a tween, we started kind of struggling with like the normal, teenager tween type stuff. And I found myself like, I've never been a rageaholic, but not having the patience and not controlling my emotions as much as I would like. I noticed myself getting triggered more than I would have liked. And I noticed I had enough self-awareness, enough healing to know that I could hear some of the ways my dad interacted with me growing up. And I was like, no, this is not happening. And literally, and this is not a knock against my dad, because I know my dad did the best that he could, and I love my dad, and I know he loves me. So please know this is nothing, my dad had his own trauma that he dealt with, right? He was physically and verbally, emotionally, and psychologically abused. Okay. So in my dad's defense, but I'm sharing that because I had enough of the observation skills at that point to know that I could see myself, right? Like I was watching a movie through the mindfulness, through the witness mind, through the meditation I had done at that point, to be able to see myself in the behavior and the way I was talking, my tone of voice. And I was like, no. So it was probably within 6 months or so after me starting to notice this, that the yoga psychology training came up for me.
Oh, okay.
And it popped up in my feed, just like it did for you. And in 2 weeks after me seeing that, I was on a plane to Los Angeles. And that's how fast that happened for me.
Cool.
So it was kind of like these different stages that I went through. 10 years ago, I had the breakdown and the burnout and all of that happened. Showed up at a counselor's office, and she said, have you ever tried yoga? right? And that's when I first time walked into a yoga studio. And within 3 months, I was teaching yoga. So there is no doubt in my mind that yoga for mental health was something that is part of my path. And I am a huge advocate for yoga for mental health.
Right.
But then that took me, 4 or 5 more years until the next iteration happened of me going deeper into my own healing. And then once I went through that, that was the inspiration for what I do now.
Cool.
So everything I teach you guys, I have gone through myself. Mm-hmm. I have transformed and healed those patterns myself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Yeah. And you and I think, connected too, as far as perfectionism and some of the other inner critics that we both could relate to as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I had overworking, workaholic, the taskmaster, inner critic, and the perfectionist, and imposter syndrome for a long time, and people pleaser. And I still deal with people pleaser, by the way. That's probably one of my biggest ones that I'm working on right now.
Yeah. People pleasing, that one was for me. I'm the youngest, so it was people pleasing, a lot of inner critic, you're not good enough, or you don't have it figured out, or so those kinds of things. The monkey mind just kept circling and sabotaging any time that you would get excited about trying something or doing something. It'd be like, whoa, wait a minute. You can't, or somebody else, or and I think also just speaking and using my voice, and speaking up for myself in a way that wasn't in a defensive way, but in a way that was really, listening to another person's side of view, and not always, so you learn about what your triggers are, and learning how to, not just, have a voice and speak. I could speak, obviously, but I wanted to speak in a way that, was communicating and opening conversations and communications that with my husband and my children and my family and friends, in a way that wasn't always serving myself, but serving the collective, everyone. So,
yeah. Well, I love that you shared that as well, because I think that was something else that you and I had in common as well, was the people pleasing, but also being able to use our voice, right? And just like what you said, using it in what we call conscious communication, right? Being able to press the peace pause, call it the peace pause. I'm going to write that in the comments, peace pause, and be able to create the pause between stimulus and response, right? And that's part of mindfulness also, is that we retrain the brain through mindfulness and meditation to react less and respond more. And so that we can actually be in WiseMind, which is a psychology term for those of you that don't know what WiseMind is. It is being in the middle path between emotion mind and logic mind. And so we want to be able to use emotions when we make a decision, and we want to be able to use logic. And when we get into that place, like Kim was just talking about with emotion mind, that's when we're reacting. We're not thinking before we say something, or we're in a place of anger or frustration or sadness, where we're saying things that we wish we could take back. And everybody's been there at one point or the other, whether that's been recently, whether maybe that was you in your 20s, maybe as a teenager, maybe in your adult life. But I can tell you that took me into my 40s to be able to pause and step back and do exactly what you just described, that I was no longer defensive. I was not reacting, that I actually really listened to what was the other person trying to tell me. And then when I tried to communicate how I was feeling, that I wasn't sitting here with tears running down my face, because oftentimes it was never pure anger that I would deal with. It was more under the anger iceberg of fear, of sadness, of frustration, and some of these other underlying feelings. For me, I was never a rageaholic or anything like that. It was usually just I'd be so frustrated. I didn't know how to communicate my feelings of what I was feeling. And then my tears would just run down my face.
Yeah. And then,
just and I couldn't control it.
I know.
couldn't control it. It was just, now I can.
Sure.
But in the past, it was just, and I know a lot of people struggle with that, Kim.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you see a lot of clients that struggle with that. And I'm such a huge advocate. I mean, that's definitely another thing that I'm a huge advocate of, and this program is as well, is for people to better understand their emotions and how to process their emotions and not repress their emotions, and to be able to regulate and control their emotions. And also how the emotions affect their mood and how they feel in their own body, which is why we talk about emotion being energy in motion in module 2. And we teach people to understand that if you're beating yourself up and self-sabotage and guilt and shame, you're at the lowest vibration scientifically you can be at. You literally have pulled yourself down in the lowest possible vibration that you can be at. And there's a science behind it. That's what the Dr. David Hawkins scale created, that, there's a science behind our emotions and how we feel. And so we can start putting these connections and these dots together of like, oh my gosh, wow, that makes so much sense. That when I beat myself up about this and I'm in self-sabotage, I feel horrible in my own body. I feel horrible in my own mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I feel this. That's one of the many reasons why I feel this way.
Right.
And I think when people start to understand the logic behind understanding how we can start to control our thoughts and emotions and behavior, and that pattern that all starts with thoughts, and that loop, thought, emotion, behavior, around and around and around, more and more people could be aware that that's what's happening to them in their subconscious mind, the more they can control it. The more they can learn to control it. Does that make sense?
And it's a habit, it's a pattern, and then you can shift it just as easy as it is to do it. You can do something else when you call it, name it out, and call it out, and tame it and turn it into something else. Because it's an illusion. It's not truth. Just because you're thinking it doesn't mean it's fact. It's not. It's an illusion. And so if you can step outside of yourself and look at it in that way, knowing it's not you, it's just something that you're experiencing, then you can have the power to experience something else, choose something else, choose something different that more aligns with who you are and what you want to do and what you want to be. So
I love that, because you and I both have that in common too, that we're both, advocates for women empowerment, for living in your power, living in your truth. And to your point, that you don't have to stay stuck, that you can choose to be unstuck, and that you actually have a choice in the thoughts that you allow to come in. And again, I was in my 40s until I figured this out. I was like, wait a minute, I have a choice of what thoughts I allow to come into my mind. I allow toxic thoughts to come in.
Right.
And
that's because they're familiar. It's just something your body's like, well, we know this, so let's keep thinking about this. This is what we know. This is what we've always done. And then when you try to shift, know that it's going to push back, and it's going to be like, no, that's, let's go back to what we know. I'm more comfortable here. But so when you're trying to change, just know that will happen. And it just, it takes some time.
Right. Yeah. I'm laughing because one of the analogies that I like to think of, Kim, it's like when someone's like literally sticking their heels in the ground, and like they're being drugged, and they're pushing their heels into the ground, and they're almost like being forced to change.
Yeah.
Because first you have to make the decision, and you have to decide that I'm done with the way things have been going, right? So when somebody makes that decision, that they say, I'm done, and I'm going to get unstuck, and I'm going to stop this behavior that's not serving me anymore, or whatever the thought pattern is. But even once you've made that decision, you still are going to have to fight the resistance, right?
Yeah.
Resistance, like you said, is still going to come, and you have to keep going. Like, you're going to get fear. You have to keep going beyond the fear. The change and the transformation and the healing has to become the most important thing. And so that you can shift everything else. That's why it's so important for that decision to be so like, boom, like line in the sand.
Yeah.
I will change. It's not a matter of I might change, or maybe I could do this. It's I will change, and I am healing, and I am transforming.
Yep.
And that way you can start to push all the ego and the brains.
The ego, yeah.
Yeah, let's stay in our little nice, familiar, unhealthy patterns, right? Whatever that is, whether it's emotional reactivity, overeating, over drinking, overworking, whatever the thing is, people pleasing, perfectionism. Let's just stay here because this feels safe and familiar. Let's just keep doing this.
Right.
And guess what? The brain will let you keep doing that the rest of your life unless you change it. Okay. So flash, news flash here. Okay. But the good news is what Kim said, you can change any behavior pattern. You can change any thought pattern, and it doesn't matter how old you are.
Right.
You just make that decision that you're going to make a change. You can be 60 and change your thought patterns. That's what neuroplasticity is. The brain could change at any time. We can heal the heart at any time. And to Kim's point, we are the ones that give power to those thoughts, right? We make that decision. So if we can teach ourselves to not give power and to be detached from those thoughts, which is different from being dissociated. I mean, detached meaning the impermanence of thoughts, right? That they're not a permanent thing. Their thoughts and feelings are temporary, right? And that we're the ones that give meaning to the stories and the thoughts, and that we're the ones that give power, which means we can be the ones that take that away. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that inner critic visualization that we do of, the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, and that we give power to all of that. And then you pull the curtain back and you see what the Wizard of Oz looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about, and then I want to move into some other things, but let's talk a little bit about if somebody was coming to you. So it could be another therapist, it could be a peer, it could be a family member, a friend, or you were just going to sit down and talk to a student about, they're thinking about doing WiseMind yoga psychology program. What would you tell that student if they came to you and said, I'm thinking about doing this program?
Well, let's see. I would actually, somebody were coming to me and they said, hey, what was your experience? And, what were your takeaways? I would definitely say that it was a worthwhile program for both professionally, personally, for whatever you want to use it for. Like you said earlier, anybody can, no matter what phase you are in your life, the training will walk you through the different modules of the journey and the healing, and it will meet you where you're at and bring you through it. And what I liked about the program is that there was online, there were videos that we were able to watch. There was written material, and then there was some mentor one-on-one and group work. And the type of learner that I am, I'm a combination. I really enjoyed having the videos. I didn't have to sit and watch them. I could just throw my headphones in, and I had to clean the house, or I went for a walk. So it was just another way to learn the material, and I felt like I was I had the time to do that. So if you're wondering what kind of a time commitment this is, you can carve out time in your schedule depending on what your life looks like, and with the different tools, the different whether video, written. So that was, and that's what I would say to students or potential people. That's what you would expect from it. And there's a lot of material to be had. And, you always said, don't worry. There is a lot of material, but that's because I've been busy, and, I want you to have all of it. And so I learned how to, and the fact that you can, it's for life. How do you word that again? The
For
material.
lifetime access. Yeah, you have lifetime access to everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, you have like takeaway worksheets that I could use in my practice or with myself. That was cool. And then also workshops and retreats, which I'm interested in. So I didn't feel the pressure. As I was learning the material, I knew that, okay, this program is 6 months, but I have, I can continue to learn more, as I go, and that's what I plan to do. And that made me feel very relaxed, and that was another bonus that I didn't have to get it all in, because a lot of programs end once it ends, you're done. But
Right.
this stuff is, you have it all, in made for you handouts that you could easily, I have in my computer. I can just click and I go to that one, quizzes that I might want to use with somebody. So it's already done, and there's research behind it. So it's easy, like this stuff makes sense to a person who, maybe doesn't have my background, or, it just is, wanting, just to read it for themselves. And that's what I find helpful for myself and my clients. So yeah, I would recommend, giving it a shot, definitely sit in on a consultation, just, again, see where the fit is, you started off with that. And I think that's important. And you've done this where you understand, you want to meet the person where you're at. But if it's not the greatest time, you'll let them know. But I think for the most part, it's a fit for most people, right?
Yeah. I would say, there might be less than, on one hand, people that I've talked to, and usually, like, there might be 3 to 5 people out of all the people I've talked to. And, usually it might be something around like a health issue or mental health wise, like they might have been close to almost like in a breakdown situation. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not a time for you to join this program. Like, you need to be seeing a professional therapist. So that's kind of what I mean by 95% of the people I talk to, it is a good fit.
Right.
And we figure out, I help them with the timing so they understand, like what you just explained. You don't have to stress yourself out about getting through all of this in 6 months. There is no pass fail. That's another important thing for me to mention. It's our schools, up to the school to decide how we do all that. And with WiseMind, because we are an advocate for mindful self-compassion as well, that we are not in the mindset of failing people. So it is not a pass fail situation. We know that everyone is going to do the best job that they can in the training, and that we're giving you a safe place to practice. And that's what it is. So there's no pressure in our program as far as people don't need to worry about, not making it through the program. So I wanted to mention that because there are some schools that are like that and we are not. So it's important for me to mention that. I also wanted to mention that this is almost like a combination between a group coaching program and a yoga certification program, because in a normal YTT program, you don't get the handouts, the workshops, all the extra stuff that you guys get, all the handouts. Like you might have a manual, like a 50 or 100 page manual. You guys have a 900 page manual as a resource. Okay. We're not expecting you to read the whole thing. It's meant to be there as a resource. The handouts are perfect, whether you're a coach, you want to use it on yourself, as Kim mentioned, you want to use it with your family. If you have a daughter or a son, or you want to use it with your husband. We have a lot of students that have done this. And I had that conversation with Melissa when I talked to her. So we don't charge any extra for that if you want to use it with somebody in your family. And yeah, there's a wealth of information in there. Because the other thing is I have handed you guys what I used to do with one-on-one yoga psychology clients when I was at the studio. So you guys have that whole system of what I used to do with one-on-one clients. So it's similar, like me sitting down with you, like being able to go through that, like what we do in module 1, and then you being able to take that and use it yourself. So that's kind of what I mean. It's important for me to point that out to people, because anyone who's been or not been even part of a yoga teacher training program, they wouldn't really understand that what we offer is well beyond the value of just getting a certification. Does that make sense?
And
yeah.
I also wanted to mention the last module, or second to last, was about your business, bringing it into your business and what that would look like and what to think about. It kind of prompted you to kind of start thinking about what you wanted to do with the material. And, you don't get that in a lot of places. I know, even I talked to a lot of my, counselor therapist friends, even in our master's program, you never were given any idea of how to use your work and as a business, not one. So, that was very, helpful. And it's an introduction to it, and it's a way to get your mind thinking about it, with some ideas. So that's included with it. So that's helpful.
Yeah, that's important to mention, to your point, also, because in normal teacher trainings, like no matter what level it is, again, there's usually very minimal about business, or how do you market yourself? How do you create an online program?
That's exactly, the online program. That's what brought me to this. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning, because, I got to the point where I was, all the work through COVID, and, I had more time. There's only so many hours in a day that I can meet one-on-one with clients, whether it's telehealth or in person. And I decided, what else can I do? How can I do business in another way, the way the world is going? And that this program has, given me the opportunity to figure some of that out. And, that's what my husband was like, why? I don't, how's that going to add value? And I was like, excuse me. Yeah, you probably won't, but like, obviously, I cannot, I want to spend my time doing some other things. I've been in, this profession for over 30 years, and my time and what I'm looking for in my future isn't going to be one-on-one, which caps off. So I definitely had the energy and the excitement to look and see what that's going to look like for me. And so this is actually like a good introduction and step to help me figure that out.
No, absolutely. And we do at least get you started in that realm. We do talk about, a little bit about marketing an online program and money mindset, general mindset work, setting your sankalpa, creating a signature story. There's a lot that we offer you that literally could be its own program. Like what we offer you in just the business module could be its own business program. So that's kind of what I mean by there's a lot of value in this program. And we are going to also be in the future offering an onset to this that will be business and mindset focused. So someone who wants to go beyond just what you get in module 5, they want more support. They might want help building a landing page. They might help, even though I give you a good foundation for building a brand and marketing your online program, it goes beyond that, because you do have to build a brand. You have to build market awareness about who is this person, right? Especially when you're online. It's like, okay, there's like millions of people online. You know what I mean? Like people have to know who you are first before you can get them into, a program, unless it's one of your therapist students or therapist clients, that's different. But I'm talking about beyond that, when you're putting yourself out into the world, there's some strategies and some things that you don't want to just like start throwing stuff out. You know what I mean? Like, see me getting on Instagram every day and just like start talking. You know what I mean? Like there has to be some kind of strategy. And what is your sankalpa? What is your why? Like, what is the message you want to put out into the world? And that's what we teach you in module 5. That's the foundations of getting that set up of what is my why, right? And what is my sankalpa, and what is my dharma and yoga, my intention and my purpose. And that's going to change as you evolve, right? So like the things that I'm focused on now, some of that overlaps from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and some of it is moving forward into another way that I'm living my dharma. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're always evolving and changing as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a leader, as a teacher, as a student. So that's another reason why we try to support. After the program, we'll support if someone's either starting a business, they're trying to grow or scale a business, they're changing their business, they're adding online, or they're trying to grow an online business, whatever that is. So that's a whole nother for graduates or people that need help with that. We're here for that as well. And that's called the inner circle. So just side note on that. Okay. So as far as the, you mentioned the learning management system. I did want to mention that really quick. A couple quick things that in the learning management system, you are able to, as Kim mentioned, you can listen to it on your phone. You can listen to it on the computer. There are a lot of masterclass style lessons where, as Kim mentioned, you could be walking or doing something else and listening to those. And then the ones that are like literally where you're having to sit down and do a journaling exercise or something that's more, you really need to be focused, then you carve out your time for those kind of more important exercises. And most of those are in module 1. I mean, they go throughout the program, but I think a lot of that work is more in laying the foundations in module 1. And that's where we do the shadow work and the soul work and all of that. It's also important to mention that it is mostly self-paced as far as you can do it on your own time. And, you can mark complete, you can go back to a video that you watched halfway through. It is a full learning management educational platform. So I did want to mention that. And as Kim said, you can download the handouts. They're there with each video. We do a checklist for each module so you can follow it. You can download it or print it out. So we've spent a lot of time with, the organization of the material so that it's very easy to follow and very easy to digest, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we have all kinds of bonuses, retreats that we've recorded, and all kinds of stuff that you can go back and watch that are bonuses beyond just like the training. Mm-hmm. So as far as anything else, Kim, that you would want to share around the training or things that you say yourself doing as far as from a business perspective, I did want to mention real quick what you said about the one-on-ones, right? You and I had talked about this too, that I'm not a therapist, but I did a similar business model where I had the yoga psychology coaching, and I was doing one-on-one clients for probably close to 4 years. And I hit my limit, right, where I could only meet like 20 people a week or so many people a week. And that's kind of where I started thinking about going online and being able to serve more people, right? So that's kind of another adjunct to what you're doing now, that eventually you can look at launching online courses. And I've had that conversation a lot with a lot of coaches and therapists and teachers actually recently. Seems to be a theme with that. Yoga teachers too. I just had a conversation with a yoga teacher. She's a therapist and she's focused on trauma and addiction. And she's wanting to create an online course. So the point being that there's so many things that you can do with it, whether it's as an onboarding course, if it's something that is something that the client does in between when you meet together one-on-one. There's a lot of things that you can do with that. And I definitely see you, eventually doing something like that. So that's what we're like starting to help you with in module 5, with like, how do you build an online course and how do you market it? How do you, How do you get brand awareness online? All that kind of stuff. So I know you said that you were getting to the point where you were looking at maybe setting up an online space, right? So that you could start maybe doing some taping. Is that kind of your next step, what you're thinking?
Yeah, I kind of think a little bit about that. Also, you know, I like the idea of workshops and retreats.
Mm-hmm.
And the retreat was another component of the program that I really enjoyed. So yeah, so that's what I'm kind of thinking about right now, is what that would look like. Some in person, some online, and what the focus would be. Obviously, you know, I like to work with women. You know, you know, there's just so many things that you can do with it, depending on what, you know, what your interest is. Where, you know, right now I have a after school running program for girls called Girls Gotta Run, self-empowerment, which I've enjoyed for over like 10 years. But I'm thinking I might want to move more towards, you know, women, adult, you know, and the, you know, burnout with, you know, being moms or profession or whatnot. So that's where I see it going, you know, kind of menopause, you know, the next stage in your life. So I can, you know, when asking what I plan to do with it, it would be like a combination of those things.
Yeah. And I know it's going to be a creative process, and you and I have talked about that it's kind of like you've got to start somewhere.
Right.
And then once you start, then you start to see, okay, it becomes more and more clear of, okay, this is an area where I'm going to be able to focus on even more. Does that make sense? Like, and maybe it is two paths, right? It could be, to your point, where you continue working with teenage girls and you're working with women, or you may decide that you're going to focus more on one over the other, you know? Right. So it's just going to be a matter of you working through that process and then getting feedback and what you're feeling called to do, right? Like whatever your next step is in your purpose and your dharma of what you're feeling called to do, right?
Yeah.
So, and I love that you brought up the retreat. I did want to mention that briefly before we talk about the retreat. So I have Creative Balance is your practice, and what is your website, Kim?
It's www.creativebalancecounseling.com.
Creative Balance Counseling. CreativeBalanceCounseling.com. Okay, put that in the comments. Creative Balance Counseling. And you can find Kim also on Facebook at Creative Balance also. She has a Facebook page. But the retreat, I loved that we were able to meet in person at the retreat. And we are going to be offering a retreat this year, but it will be kind of separate in some ways from the program, in that it will be optional. And so it's going to be a little bit different this year, that I'm looking at doing something probably in Sedona or California, possibly in Florida. It's unlikely it'll be in North Carolina this year. It's probably going to be in Sedona, most likely. And the students that are interested in a retreat, I'm going to have the winter cohort that starts this month. They'll have first priority to choose which of them want to go. And then I'll go through the other cohorts. And then if we still have spots open, I'll open it to the public. So it's going to be a little bit different from last year, the way we're going to do it. But it's still going to have the same effect, that we'll invite women from the different cohorts where we can come together. And most likely it's probably not going to be until the fall though this year instead of the summer. Unless I end up doing something in California or North Carolina, like if I do something in the Southern California area, then I probably be doing that in the summer. if I do something in Sedona or Florida, it would definitely be in the fall because it's too hot to do something there in the summer.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but we had a beautiful time, like Kim and I, and there was almost 25 women in the group all together. There was like 20, 25 of us, and we got to meet from all over the country. I mean, that was the amazing part is we had people from California, Arizona, Florida, New York, Toronto. Is that what you said? Yeah. Colorado, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky.
And it was funny because like we all got together and I felt like I knew them my whole life. It's so weird. It's very nice.
In South Carolina, Martha's from South Carolina. And then this year we've got Christina is in Alaska, which she's from this year's cohort, but she'll be coming to the retreat next year. And we've got somebody from Courtney from Arizona will be going to the retreat. It'll work out if we do it in Sedona because she lives like 2 hours from there. And I've got another person from Florida already that's going to be coming too. So, I'm just kind of like thinking through. I did want to mention one of my favorite parts was two things. One was the fire transformation ceremony. That's one of my favorites because I know students really enjoy that, and it's a really powerful part of the retreat. And we'll be doing that. That'll be a standard ceremony that we do with any retreat we do is the fire transformation ceremony. And for those of us that listen to this or have never heard about what it is, you're basically writing a letter to yourself. And it usually is, dear samskara pattern. It could be, dear perfectionist, dear inner critic, dear imposter syndrome. It could be a particular emotional pattern. It could be dear anger, dear fear, whatever the thing is. It could be a relationship that you're trying to let go of. It could be a past resentment that somebody you're trying to forgive, right? So it could be a letter to yourself. It could be a letter to somebody else, but usually it's writing to yourself. And every woman in that circle was brave enough, and it happens every single time, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about this, is that one woman shares, and then everybody in the circle goes around and ends up doing it. And usually when we start, they're not 100% sure if they're going to share that with everybody, but then it just turns into this energy where everybody starts to share and everybody gets brave and, and steps up and does it. And so, but basically they read their letter out loud and then they burn it in the fire. And that's meant to symbolize that they're letting it go. And I wish I had my crystal here with me, but we also have a crystal knife that we use where we hold the knife up and we claim it, right? We name it, we claim it, that we're releasing the samskara pattern, right? And we're doing it in front of everybody. And then the second thing is, which is something that's funny between Kim and I, which I have to talk about this, is one of the beautiful things about the location we were at last year is there were all these different things that you can do, right? They had tennis courts, they had a golf course, they had kayaking, a swimming pool, they had a walk path around the lake. Like it was beautiful. Like it was surrounded with mountains and this beautiful man-made lake. You could go hiking the mountains. It was like 15 minutes away. And Kim and I and some other of the YTTs decided to go paddle boarding. And we're chatting so much. Like we got along so well. You and I really were like sisters, Kim.
Wow.
I mean, we had never met before.
No.
We just had connections where it was like, and we're chatting away that we did not even notice that we had paddled ourselves beyond these big yellow ball things that you're not supposed to go into that part of the water. And we literally had to like paddle ourselves.
And there was a reason why they had the barriers, because once you get past that and the wind started, it was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get back? And
I was getting a little bit, I wasn't panicked, but I was a little bit like, I'm not moving. Like,
no,
I'm not.
And we thought we were. And
we weren't, yeah, we weren't moving, but we thought we were, and we just kept talking. And so literally that probably went on for, I don't know, 20 minutes. So then we
we were like, we got to get back.
we went off to the side.
Yeah.
What happened? And then we paddled our way back to
Yeah.
where everybody else was. But
Yeah.
I remember seeing like the cross and some of the other stuff in the distance. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not moving. And so anyway, I had to tell that story because it was
I
funny.
know, but it was fun. It was really funny because again, like all of a sudden we just got caught up in it, you know, just talking, and it was very exciting and fun, and the weather was beautiful, and then we were like, oh no, and then we had to put on our, like, we got this, you know, let's go, and strategy. We get off to the side, and then eventually we made it back to.
And I'm not going to lie, Kim. I mean, I was exhausted
I know.
by the time we got back because I've done paddleboarding in the past.
Yeah.
But I had not done that much paddleboarding in a while. And I was exhausted by the time we got
well,
back.
we had thought, like, could we just climb out and walk, you know, or like, could somebody come get us? But we got there, and then we met up with the other girls. We were just like so relaxed on the paddleboard. I'm like,
oh my gosh, I know Adrian and Celine were like way back. Like, I think Adria was just like, or Adriana was just like chilling and like sunning herself. And then Celine was like doing, I don't know, down dogs and stuff because she was like paddleboarding.
I think we were just like our overachiever, just like, let's go, you know, we're going to go to the other side. Yeah. And I'm like, but it was fun. And that was, we'll always have that.
Yeah, and I enjoyed also us being able to do the yoga outside was really fun. Like, one of the locations was this beautiful location where they do weddings, and the view for you guys was the mountains, like the whole lake and the mountains. Yeah. What we did on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
I envisioned that for you guys. Like, I went back in February and I checked out all the spots of where I wanted you guys to do yoga. And the other one was the amphitheater that we did on Sunday morning. Yeah, and we did the worship music, which was the first time for me as well that we actually sang. So I am going to be integrating song more this year as well. So you will see that in my teaching. I am going to be doing more singing, even more singing. It'll be all types of singing, from like English affirmations to worship music, but like kind of like what I did on Saturday, right, where we were singing that beautiful chorus song. You're going to see more of that this year. So speaking of which, I should mention that I am teaching again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time. Okay. I'll be live on Facebook and on Instagram tomorrow morning. So more of that to come, Kim. I'll have to update you guys as we get further along with that planning. But thank you so much. I am so grateful for like you stepping out of your comfort zone to be on here live with us. And I'm so grateful for you to take your time, to take the time and the energy to share your experience so that other students out there can hear coming from a student's words. Like, there's no better way for other students to hear about the program than from our own students, because I can talk about it all day long, but I'm the founder. Do you know what I mean? So it means a lot for you to take the time and the energy to share your experience and your transformation. And I really appreciate you taking the time to do it.
Absolutely. I was honored to jump on and kind of, you know, share my thoughts. And, you know, I appreciate all you've done for me and the others in the program. And, you know, I see good things coming. Yeah. And I totally recommend it for anyone who's interested in, you know, stepping out of their comfort zone and, you know, transforming to the next phase of their life, or just being within themselves and being more comfortable within that. But I appreciate everything and getting to know you more throughout this program. And I'm looking forward to what's to come.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited. I can't wait to see what you do and what, all the other ladies do with this as well, because I know this is just a starting point. It's just a stepping stone for all of you. And I know it's going to lead to so many other things, which is why we do this, because I'm only one person, right? I can only do so much. But if I can get this out to more and more people, then it will create a ripple effect across the world and across the country. And that is my intention. That's my mission. That's the movement. Because I'm only one person, right? So similar to like you and I talking about, when I was at the studio and I can only work with 20 people in a week, and it's the same thing now. Like I'm only one person to get this out to so many people. And unless you need to get it in more people's hands so that it can get out to more people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that you can share your story that you're meant to share, and I can share my story, and everyone can share how they're meant to serve certain students, because we each have an audience of students that we're solely meant to help, that it's our calling to help that group of students.
Absolutely.
All right. So I'm sending you so much of light and blessing, girl. Namaste. And we will talk to you soon, okay?
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.